Medical devices are not without risk. Despite our best efforts in safe design, manufacturing controls, labeling, and use instructions, there are many malfunctions and injuries in the field. And in some cases, products have to be recalled. And this is done to prevent patient injury, especially when the risk to their safety is high. Unfortunately, recalls are very common in our industry. And chances are that you have had to handle one or more recalls in your career. It is not a pleasant experience, but it offers real-world experience and an opportunity to learn. Hello and welcome. I'm Naveen Agarwal, and I help medical companies build safe products through a quality management system that is not only compliant, but also focused on the needs of patients and doctors. So call me or email me with your questions and let me know how I can help you. In this video, I'm going to talk about a recent Class 1 recall. My goal here is to use this as a case study to highlight some of the key points and opportunities to improve our risk assessments. FDA classifies recalls based on the risk, and Class 1 is the highest risk to patient safety. This particular recall is a Class 1 recall of a device that is used in cardiovascular surgery, and it's called over-the-wire embolectomy catheter. Let's look into the details of this recall and the reason for this recall in the next slide. This slide shows an overview of the device and reason for the recall. This device is used to remove clots in blood vessels, called emboli, or clots in veins, called thrombi. This is a Class 2 device with a product code DXE. This specific device received 510(k) clearance in 2002. The way it works is that the surgeon inserts the catheter into the blood vessel or the vein and goes past the clot, then inflates a balloon to break up the clot. Then the catheter is pulled back, but if the balloon does not deflate, there could be a problem. Under the tension of the pull, the catheter tip could separate and block the patient's blood vessel. This could result in serious harm to the patient, such as a heart attack, a stroke, or even death. One piece of good news is that this issue was identified through post-market surveillance. The manufacturer noticed an increasing trend in the number of reports related to this issue. And although there were no injuries, they took voluntary action and issued a recall notice to their customers. This is how the system is supposed to work. What is interesting to note is that FDA has classified this as a process control issue. We don't have specific details, but we can use this information to review how a process risk assessment can help us manage these issues before they happen. A process risk assessment is expected to be a part of the risk file for each product. This is especially important if you are following ISO 14971. Now, in my experience, in the industry, the most common tool used for this purpose is a process failure mode effects analysis. There are other tools like the fault tree analysis or HAZOP analysis, but PFMEA is most commonly used. I do not recommend using a PFMEA as a risk assessment for the purpose of safety risks, and I'll explain why. A PFMEA is a very good tool for analyzing the different failure modes in your process and implementing controls, but it is not a good substitute for a process risk assessment within the context of ISO 14971. Let's take a look at how a process risk assessment can help you. There's a lot going on in this slide, so we will go over it slowly. Going from left to right, we first realize there are many opportunities for failure in the process, say a manufacturing process, and that may lead to problems. These are shown as red dots. When you implement controls to prevent those failure modes from happening, it is like creating a protective barrier or a shield in the system. But it is not a perfect barrier, and it has cracks inside it. It means that the risk is not reduced to zero. There is still a small chance for things to go wrong. There can be many things that can go wrong during surgery. Typically, there's a trigger event, which leads to a cascade of other events. Sometimes that's also called sequence of events. Say in this case, The trigger event is that the balloon fails to deflate during the pullback step. It may be because of several failure modes, not just one. Once it happens, it may lead to a domino effect. For example, as the surgeon continues to pull the catheter back, the tip breaks. This leads to a hazardous situation because the broken tip now can get stuck and block the blood vessel. At this stage, the patient is exposed to one or more hazards of surgery, which may lead to one or more harms of different severities. And in most cases, the surgeon will be able to solve the problem. But in some extreme cases, it may cause some serious problems like a heart attack, a stroke, or even death. In a process risk assessment, you need to be able to identify and outline all of these different scenarios in as much detail as possible. Now, you can start to work from top down. For example, you can start with a harm, let's say a heart attack, and trace back the steps that might lead to that scenario, involving all possible combinations of events. It'll take you to the trigger event, and that trigger event can be related to one or more failure modes. Or you can start bottoms up, which means that you can start with a failure and then trace that trajectory along the way to see what kind of trigger event it might lead to and what will be the sequence of events leading to a potential harm. So it is basically a back and forth activity where you could do a top down and a bottoms up approach to come up with as many scenarios as possible. It is like building a tree or a network with many branches and many relationships. And the more specific you are, the more detailed you are, the better you will be in managing these risks. Now, it is quite reasonable that you may not have everything that you need to know right up front. So do the best you can and continue to update this information as you learn more from your post-market surveillance. Let me quickly touch upon the comment I made about the PFMEA earlier. In my opinion, a PFMEA, or let's say another tool like the fault tree analysis or HAZOP analysis, they are linear tools in the sense that they go line by line and every line is specific to a certain way things can go wrong. The main problem is that a trigger event may happen not because of one issue, but a variety of issues. And that is where this one-to-one relationship that we have in a PFMEA doesn't translate very well in a risk assessment. So in this context, a risk assessment or a process risk assessment is a slightly higher level document that is an aggregation of different issues and the controls that have been put in place and their potential impact. There's a relationship, but you have to find that linkage between these lower level documents like PFMEAs and a higher level document like a process risk assessment. So in this way, when you do a process risk assessment, you have a place to go when things happen in the field. And you can then walk your way down because it's an aggregation of all the different analyses that you have done in your underlying documents. So in conclusion, recalls unfortunately are very common in our industry. But each recall, even though it's a painful experience for us internally, is an opportunity for us to learn. In this video, we talked about how you can set up a process risk assessment to manage and control your safety risks. The idea here is to essentially create a linkage between harms, hazardous situations, and all the possible underlying hazards. And the way it's done is through creating a proper relationship between underlying detailed one-to-one risk analysis documents with this particular process risk assessment. So take a look at your process risk assessment and see how well it's working for you. I will be talking more about this topic in other videos, so make sure to come back and check them out. Thank you for your interest and attention. If you like this video, please subscribe to my channel. You can also visit my website www.exceedqm.com to learn more about this topic. There's an article on my blog which goes into much more detail and offers a lot more guidance. You can also subscribe to my monthly newsletter. to stay current with industry trends and what's going on in the regulatory world. It takes only 15 minutes to catch up, and it's absolutely free.